What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it's Tuesday, which means it's time for our weekly tier list Tuesday. And I thought, with obviously one of the biggest themes of this season being Ovechkin chasing down the goal record, which was looking like it was going to be a sure thing for this season before he got hurt, it's definitely still possible that he breaks this season, but most likely definitely going to break it by the start of next season. I thought it'd be a fun idea for tier list Tuesday to go through basically all the major individual records by players, whether that's points in a season, most Hart trophy, well, both of them are held by Wayne Gretzky, most Stanley Cups. We'd go through some of the biggest individual records in the entire NHL and basically tier list how likely they are to eventually be broken one day. I basically did this like in our lifetime, the next 50 to 60 years. Hopefully we live even longer than that. But yeah, nearly impossible. I think that there's genuinely like 1% or even less that it could potentially get broken. Very unlikely. 2 to 10 to 15%, probably not going to get broken. Pretty unlikely, probably like 20 to 35% chance. Could happen. Maybe it's a coin flip or maybe a little bit less over the next 50 years that it could potentially get broken. And then will happen is like there's a guy right now that is chasing that record where I think that it is pretty likely that it happens with them or someone again in the next 50 years will potentially get it. Up first, we got Phil Kessel with the legendary Ironman streak. I'm going to go with pretty unlikely. I definitely think that it's possible. What is this? It's like 13 years straight of not missing a game with modern medicine, with modern training, and what am I thinking of? A medical staff in terms of overall keeping players in shape. It's definitely possible. It's extremely hard to do. Again, 13 seasons, not missing a single game. I don't believe that any active player is even remotely close right now. But if Phil Kessel, considering his diet maybe wasn't the best as an NHL player, did it, it's possible. It's definitely possible. I think that there's like a 30% chance that it definitely could happen over the next 50 years. Joe Sakic, I'm going with could happen. This is 8 overtime playoff goals. I picked this one because there's already a guy with 5 that's active right now. I'll give you 3 seconds to guess who that is. If you selected Carter Verhaeghe, yeah, he already has 5. Matthew Tkachuk already has 3. Some other active players already have like 2 to 3. So yeah, I think that this is definitely a record that could potentially be broken relatively soon. Like a guy like Carter Verhaeghe that's only 29 years old and is on a team that's going to be a contender for the next 3 to 4 years, or 3 to 5 years, definitely. But yeah, Sakic has 8. Carter Verhaeghe has 5. I believe no one has 7, but a couple people have 6. It's definitely a record that could potentially get broken. Gretzky's goal record. I almost just said Ovechkin's goal record because this is one of the biggest locks. This is one of the biggest records in the entire NHL. And at this point, it's almost a sure thing that Ovechkin breaks it, barring an early retirement, which wouldn't happen, or like an even worse injury. God forbid, not hoping for that. Gretzky's playoff record. I am going with this. This is playoff points. 382. This guy played around like 205 playoff games. A player even accomplishing that nowadays is going to be very hard, let alone scoring at almost 2 points per game in the playoffs. I'm not going to say nearly impossible because it's possible that they add even more rounds to the playoffs or something like that happens and some player plays 250, 275 games in the playoffs and is over point per game and potentially chases it down, but it's definitely very, very unlikely. The amount of games that he played at such an insane clip, it's very, very unlikely. Patrick Marleau, I'm going to go with will happen. I think just again, similarly to Phil Kessel, this isn't Phil Kessel's obviously you got to be there every single night, but I think someone is going to play from 18 to 42 relatively soon in the next 25 to 30 years. When looking at it, it's an insane thing. And it's especially insane that he set this record despite dealing with the 2005 lockout, dealing with COVID shortened seasons in 2013 and 2020 and 2021. So it's an insane record. But I think if a Hall of Fame level player just decides, I want to play till 41, 42, and they don't have any stops in their career, any massive stops like an 82 game season stop, I think someone's eventually going to break it. I don't think that's that controversial. Even Ovechkin right now is at like 450. If he really wanted to play 5 more seasons to break this record, he could right now. Gretzky, 47 points in 1 playoff run. He did this in 18 games. I'm going to go McDavid had 42 in 25, so he played 8 more games, but was still so far away. I'm going to go with very, very unlikely. I guess it is possible if someone has a shit ton of game 7s, plays 27 or 28 games, and puts up McDavid level production. But yeah, 47 playoff points in a singular run is just next level insane. Martin Brodeur, 691 wins, very, very unlikely. Maybe it's possible if just a generational goalie talent comes around and becomes a starter at like 21 years old and plays till he's 40. But that's basically what like Martin Brodeur did. And Martin Brodeur played in his prime for like 10 straight years, 75 games a season. I'm not sure how likely that is, especially nowadays where the game leader is like 63 or 64, like Connor Hellebuck or Saros. Just to have that much longevity and play that much in your prime, it's probably not going to happen. Jeff Skinner, this record's pretty funny. 1,028 games. This is the most games without playing a single playoff game. He has yet to play a playoff game. This is going to be 1,068 if he finishes out this season fully healthy. I'm going to go very unlikely. It is insane that he has not played a single playoff game in his career. And it's hilarious what happened with him. Well, it's devastating for his career, but he was on the Carolina Hurricanes. They missed the playoffs for 8 straight years. Then he gets out of Carolina after they're horrible. That's when they got Svechnikov, gets traded to Buffalo, an up-and-coming team with Eichel and eventually Dahlin. They don't make the playoffs a single time. He's going to make it this season, so it's going to eventually come to an end. The next closest was Ron Hainsey at like 900, so even that, it's another 2 seasons. And especially with more player mobility nowadays, I just don't see anybody sniffing a full career of not making the playoffs, and especially a guy like Jeff Skinner that has been such a highly productive player. Yager, 135 game-winning goals. Ovechkin's at 132. This is even like a bigger lock than the goal record by Gretzky, considering he's probably going to get it this season pretty easily, considering he only needs 3 more. Teemu Selanne, 76 goals in a rookie season. I think I got to go with very, very unlikely. I'm not going to go nearly impossible because, again, we're going to see with some other guys, it is maybe feasible that scoring continues to rise in the NHL and gets to like 1980s and even supersedes it or something like that. So I'm not going to go less than 1%, although this would be like the least likely out of this row, in my opinion, to happen, but I can't quite go nearly impossible. It is kind of nearly impossible, but I'd go more so very, very unlikely. Alexander Ovechkin, 9 Rocket Richards. I'm going to go pretty unlikely. There's a possibility that there's just a generational goal scoring talent eventually, and there's not a ton of competition for him. I think Austin Matthews probably going to end up with like 7 to 8, but over the next 50 years, there could just be, again, an insane goal talent that wins 9 or 10. It's pretty unlikely. I'm going to move it up to very, very unlikely. Chris Chelios, 266 playoff games. I'm going to go pretty unlikely here. That is an insane run, and especially towards the end when he was on those Detroit teams, he was going deep every single year. When looking at guys nowadays, Victor Hedman's at like 160, Kucherov's at like 147. So those are the guys that I still they're in their early to mid 30s and they're still so far away where I don't think it's possible. This is probably going to hold for a long time, but maybe there's an amazing talent that's just on a contender for 10 to 15 years. Maybe McDavid. I mean, McDavid got a slow start in terms of playoff games, but yeah, this is a pretty damn impressive record. Similarly to Selanne, I'm going to put Gretzky's 92 goals in very, very unlikely. Again, do I think it gets broken? No, but if goal scoring continues to rise in the NHL and supersedes 80s rates, it's possible. It is possible, but again, I'd say like 2%. I can't quite go nearly impossible in terms of less than 1%. 215 points, same logic here. Very, very unlikely. Ovechkin's 316 power play goals. I'll go pretty unlikely here. Maybe there's just this insane generational talent again that just racks up power play goals. And again, if goal scoring continues to rise in the NHL, 2,857 points. I know you guys are going to want this in nearly impossible, but again, if goal scoring continues to rise, the thing with Wayne Gretzky, again, he still is the greatest player of all time, but he did play also in the highest scoring era in the entire NHL, the 80s, in the early 90s. If we go back to those levels, and there is a Gretzky level talent that decides to play till they're 42, 43 years old, it's somewhat possible. It's not nearly impossible. Kane, this is 52 shootout goals. It could happen. There's no guys right now that's really remotely close. Even Connor McDavid's really not that close. So it's a relatively new record considering there are enough shootouts for a while. But yeah, this definitely could happen. There's no guy right now that I'd say they're for sure going to do it though. Our first nearly impossible. I think Larry Robinson having plus 722 in his career. I think that's nearly impossible. That's like 16 to 17 seasons at basically plus 40 every single year. You need to be in the salary cap 32 team league. You're just not going to be on like a top 3 team every single season for your entire career. This is more impossible than 2,857. It just is. 5 Lindsays. I'm going to go with would happen. McDavid already has 4. I think we can pencil him in for 2 more. I was pretty surprised by this because as we see, he has 9 Harts, but 4 other times they gave the Lindsay to someone else. But I think it's definitely going to get passed by McDavid at this point. I think we can kind of pencil that in. 9 Harts. I'm gonna go with very unlikely, similarly to Alexander Ovechkin, for there to be this generational of a talent. It's possible, but it's very unlikely in terms of racking up that many awards. 139 points by Bobby Orr. I'm gonna go with pretty unlikely. Maybe Landon DuPont, again, scoring continues to rise. He is that generational defenseman and sniffs it. Pretty unlikely. Very, not very, very unlikely, but pretty unlikely. But I'll put it in there. 8 Norrises. This, I think, is a little bit more possible just because it's maybe easier to win Norrises as a defenseman than it is to win the Hart Trophy, most valuable player in the entire NHL. We saw Nicholas Lidstrom win 7 Norrises, and his first 10 years, he wasn't really winning any Norrises. He didn't win it until he was like 30 years old. So it's possible that, again, like Landon DuPont or even Cale Makar gets back on track. I know that he has a lot of leg work to do in that, but it's possible. This is another nearly impossible one, a plus 124 season. You could do this back when there was like 12 teams in the NHL. You can't do it now. You can't do it. The highest players nowadays are like plus 50. I think on the Bruins teams, they had a couple guys that were like plus 50, plus 55. You still have another 2.5x to go at that point. 48 wins. This is definitely a could happen. I'm not sure anybody's going to do it relatively soon, but you look at a guy like Linus Ullmark when he won the Vezina, he won 40 games that season. He only played like 50 games. Again, that was a generational regular season by the Bruins. But yeah, this is definitely it could happen. I wouldn't pencil it in. Guys like Vasilevsky in their prime, I think he hit 40 a couple times, but I'm not sure he ever got more than like 43. Insane numbers by Brodeur and Holtby. It seems wild that these are the two guys, not really Brodeur. I would expect Brodeur to have more when he's playing 75 games. But yeah, this is relatively a new kind of record because some of the old goalies got screwed by ties, obviously. They didn't have overtime or shootout wins. Another impossible record, 502 games straight by Glenn Hall. I think we could agree, in my opinion, out of like the major records, this is straight up the most impossible. Unless robots start playing the game and we count that. 502 straight starts. You can't even see a goalie start 8 straight games nowadays in the NHL. So 502, what would this be? Quick math. 6 straight seasons, right? Yeah, 6 straight seasons, not missing a single game. That is never getting touched. I think for Wah, you got to go with very, very unlikely. 151 playoff wins. For context, Marc-Andre Fleury only has like 91. Actually, I might move this down to pretty unlikely. Next 50 years, maybe there's just this insane goalie on a dynasty team. But even again, Vasilevsky isn't remotely close. He is like 60 right now. So I'm going to go very, very unlikely. 3 Conn Smythes. I'm going to go with could happen. In terms of tying this record, I was pretty surprised that Watt has the record at 3. I thought some other people would be tied with him. He has it straight up. He's the only guy with 3 Conn Smythes. If there's just the best player in the league or a top 3 player that wins 3 Stanley Cups and is clearly the best player on their team or wins 4 Stanley Cups, it definitely could happen. I wouldn't pencil in any player right now. I don't think Sidney Crosby's winning another Conn Smythe to tie Patrick Waugh. So in order to pass it to go to 4, I'd say pretty unlikely. But I'm just going to go with, considering there's such low numbers here, I'm going to go with just could happen. We got Rick Middleton, 19 points in 1 series. I'm going to go with could happen, considering the fact that Leon Draisaitl, 2023 or one of the years that they played the LA Kings, he had 17 points in 5 games. So there'd have to be some scenario where they are the better team, but player's goaltender just shits the bed, so it goes to 7 games. But it's definitely possible that an absolute superstar in the first round could score 20 points in 7 games. So I'm gonna go with could happen. I wouldn't bet on it probably, but it definitely could happen, considering one guy got so close recently in only 5 goddamn games. And then lastly, Henry Richard, nearly impossible. 11 Stanley Cups. That's just not gonna happen in the salary cap era. You'd be lucky to win, again, 3 to 4 as the star best player on a team, and then you'd have to cup chase and get another like 7. Just not happening. It's just not happening in the modern NHL with how competitive it is. It could have happened back in the original 6 early expansion days, but now it's just straight up impossible. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? This Wayne Gretzky guy's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, let me know which ones am I completely off base on, and I will be seeing you in the next one. I thought this was a fun idea. Let me know if you like this one.